Good morning from Easier Habits Live, your 8 a.m. Central business live stream. So, all right.
So exciting.
Yep. So I'm Alec from Easier Habits. I am a business growth consultant. With me is my wife, Meg.
Yep. And I'm a communication consultant who works with global cross-cultural interactions.
Yeah. And this week we're going through a sales funnel, and I'm going to close the window while you give the communication tip because there's barking dogs. Forgot about that.
Yeah. Okay, so our communication tip for today is a fun one. Practice your improv. So as I was getting ready to come in here, I was thinking, oh no, I need a communication tip. What can I wing, or how can I wing it, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I wing it all the time. Like, I'm so used to winging it. And the way that I was able to kind of work on that so that I could do it effectively and not look like a, ridiculous person, was by doing theater in high school. We practiced, I was in this advanced theater class where for most of the year we practiced various types of improv where, some of them were the fun improv games, but other times we were given a situation, a character, or, some type of story that we had to tell. And you had to embody that like immediately. And it was hard at first, but after a while you start to just say, okay, I can assume this thing and this is who I am now. And I mean, I could go into a lot of depth about just the effect that's had on my life in general. But one of the greatest benefits I've seen to that is when I need to say something, I can usually think it up pretty quickly, as in everything that I just told you right now was not prepared. But, I was able to think about it, just embodying myself, right? And understanding my past and who I'm speaking to right now. And so if you struggle with any kind of, off the cuff speaking, then practice improv of a lot of different kinds. Now, I can't tell you how to do that. That would be a whole other thing, but just that it is useful.
Play Dungeons and Dragons. It's an improv game.
It is. It's so an improv game. It's one that stresses me out, but...
But it's just improv.
I know, right?
All right. Anyway, I'm a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. But
I love it too. Well,
apropos...
I love that you're a Dungeons and Dragons nerd.
All right, but apropos of what you said, I just watched like a clip of Regina Spektor, who does quirky singer-songwriting stuff, and apparently she did something for NPR a few months back, and they posted on YouTube, but it opens with her doing an off-the-cuff improv, song about, I guess, going in and singing at NPR, and like it's clear that she had done it enough to get, to have lots of like clever rhymes on the spot and music that flows, etc. And it is unclear whether at one point where she stops rhyming, whether she did just back herself in a corner and need time to think, or whether she did that intentionally. She kind of like drew attention to it.
Nice.
But I think my takeaway from that improv situation is she was comfortable enough in taking that pause.
Yes.
Whether she was doing it intentionally for effect or realized she needed to take a pause, so knew how to do it gracefully, that it worked, right? And that was clearly improv skill.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel awkward.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to watch that. I love Regina Spektor.
yeah, so that was just an interesting example of that. All right, so let's dive into sales funnelsy stuff. All right, how are you doing?
Okay, so sorry.
Awkward pause.
Awkward pause. Awkward pause, like a purposeful awkward pause, because and this is something I was like, I have to get this done because I'm going to be held accountable for it tomorrow. And also, I've got a couple of other things that I'm working on right now that ended up taking longer than I anticipated, which means that I really haven't worked much on it other than just a little bit more research. Yesterday, asking the people at Global Republic what things they're searching for. And I got a lot of hems and haws until one of the good English speakers, she's also an English teacher, came back and said, people don't really know what mistakes they're making, so they don't really know what to search for as far as effectiveness, which has given me a lot to think about since then. But I had intended to outline and then write my script for it. And that did not happen. And there's a lot of reasons why that didn't happen. One of them is because I had a lot of things that I needed to do. One of the reasons why I had a lot of things that I needed to do was because of poor time management earlier in the week on things that I should have done, but thought, oh, it'll go fast.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was like, okay, I could totally just like lie and be like, oh yeah, I totally did it, and just like make something up.
Right.
But I thought that this would be a really good experience, and you know, something for you guys all to see, that sometimes things are different than you anticipated, and how you deal with that. And I'm still learning how to deal with that, and I could use some help. Right?
Sure.
So maybe you can coach me through that.
And that is absolutely one of the things that we do in terms of coaching. I find working with clients that there is a mix of working on the business systems and then working on the personal routines, productivity routines. And I find that in my own practice, that is something I'm constantly tweaking, right?
Yeah. And we've talked about that a lot outside of these, but we haven't done it so much in here. It's been a lot of focus on the business. So can we do that today instead? Yes,
we can do that. Let's close a few threads though on the business, right? So you asked people, just responding to that, like what they search for to improve their English. And the answer is they don't know what they're doing, so they don't really search.
Yeah.
All right. But your avatar, and this is why you have a fleshed out avatar, your avatar is not just someone who wants to learn English, it's someone who wants to learn business. So you should, I mean, clearly they go to this club.
Yeah.
How did they find it would be a good question, right? Like that would tell you about like where they're getting their information from, but also where do they go to learn about business, because you're at the intersection of those things. So a Japanese person looking for business, and especially for global reach, right, or whatever term they would use, would be someone who would fall in your category. So there's different avenues where you could find your target. Avatar.
Well, and there's two people who were in there who I had anticipated would have given me some answers right then and there, but they didn't for whatever reason. And so now I'm going to reach out to them specifically because one of them has already gone through this, and I want to ask him, how did you find your resources, because his English is fantastic. The other one is in that space of needing to improve, like he's got a lot of information, but it's still not quite automatic, and so I want to ask him what he would search for.
And that is like the tool you're looking for there, the best tool for the job, especially when there isn't like a quick one-off answer or clear answer, is the interview. So like could you get, you know, even 10 minutes or to ask them about, you know, what are the problems they facing, you know, what are they working on, where do they get their information, etc., what do they search for, and you know, kind of dive in, because then you can adjust. Well, okay, you don't look for English, right? But like, what about business? Where do you go to learn how to improve your business? Anyway, so that's a way you could follow up. But we also talked about, just off camera a little bit, about how Facebook ads might be a way to go if there isn't a specific question. You could go for a demographic. Like, we could talk to people, feel of different minds. There's definite benefits to Facebook ads, and you know, the fact that you can scale them up and scale them down, which presumably you could also do to some extent with YouTube ads. But the experience of searching for something, finding it, and then getting into the sales funnel is powerful, just because you can also do that with free content. So that's why I love that question. But then at the same time, like sometimes, you know, a particular formula for business doesn't work for you, and so testing out, especially like a bunch of small Facebook ads that differ on like one dimension, right? Maybe we really focus on headlines, and that's how we find, you know, we target the demographic, and then we target a lot of things we think they'd be interested based on your interviews, right? But we're not literally answering a question that someone's searching for, right? So there's ways to adjust, but getting into the personal productivity, it sounded a little bit kind of like you were double counting your time. Right? So that like, I could do this later, and, you know, in parentheses, at the same time as I'm doing all the things that will come up later on that day.
I just ignore the things that are going to come up later. And so, you know, well, and there's kind of this duality that I've been dealing with, in that I'm trying not to procrastinate, right? But I do well when motivated by stress. I wish I didn't do well when motivated by stress. I wish I could just like sit down and do something, but until it's like looming over me, like this really threatening, scary thing, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. I can just ignore it. And so figuring out how to approach that in a way that's slightly healthier mentally.
Slightly healthier mentally. Well, so there's a few different external big motivators for like changing behavior, right? And there's ideally like intrinsic, the love of what you do.
Yeah.
But you don't like marketing, so you can't really rely on like the love of marketing to help you with marketing, right? And so this actually was going to be my business tip, and maybe I'll just recap it at the end.
Okay.
But because there are things that I'm dealing with in producing the video that I love the concept, love the marketing pitch, actually producing the video that was harder for me. So you have three main levers. People rely on the first, and I think it's the crappiest, but it's discipline, right? So when you don't want to do something, discipline. And the reason why I think this is bad for people is not because they're bad at discipline, but they're using it too much. Their discipline muscle is burned out. Discipline is incredibly a short-term version of like muscling through something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're dealing, for example, with chronic pain, as I know you do, and you're engaging discipline to like move on a daily basis, like discipline is not going to be a good lever for you because you're already using it probably, to a great degree.
Well, and I mean, we learned that in the willpower instinct, right?
Right.
One of my favorite books on, this idea of willpower and discipline and everything, and that, it does easily get worn out. And so,
yeah. And the other thing, I guess, to note with discipline that is going to sap your strength is like shaming yourself, self-talk. And so saying like, I didn't do that, therefore, I'm a bad person. So what was your self-talk like when you realized that the stuff you put off was going to prevent you from doing stuff?
It's that whole thing like, oh crap, I did it again. Why can't I get this,
oops, I did it again.
Oops, I did it again. Sorry.
Good
No,
joke.
it's okay. No, that's totally the kind of
Yeah.
place my brain would usually go. Except I'm like trying to be all vulnerable on camera. And
Sorry.
It's awkward. No, it's fine. No, you lightened the moment. Thank you.
Yeah. I do that with my wife. I do that less with coaching clients. I don't usually interject Britney Spears into our conversation. So sorry if that was something you're looking for. All right. Continue.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean there is all that negative self-talk, and again, it can go one of two ways, because sometimes the negative self-talk is incredibly motivating. I'm like, get off your butt and go do crap. I'm like, okay, I'll go do the crap. And then other times it's like, nope. And I just shut down.
Right. Well, because you've had too much, right? It becomes like beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
Trying to do things out of stress. So, all right, just taking that piece, right? That's something that's sapping your discipline. I still don't think you should rely primarily on discipline.
Yeah.
But if we're going to unblock you there, the exercise is what would you say to a friend who had just done the same thing?
I mean, I'm so much like nicer to my friends than I am to myself.
That's like most people are.
I know. Again, the idea of not being able to change the past. So let's, kind of move forward from that particular judgment. And then have a little bit of like I don't want to say like tough love, but kind of like a little bit of tough love, harsh reality, look at actual reality, right? So how much time do you have? How long do you think this is going to take?
Yep.
What is it that has come up that has prevented you from doing that? And, I kind of think of those things, and for me, it's like those times when my brain gets overwhelmed and just like, oh, this is so much and I'm tired and I have so many other things. And so I get like my brain distracts itself to the point where I want to turn it off. Yeah. So I do something that will numb it for a while. Again, not a very healthy coping mechanism because it wastes time, isn't productive, but it feels good in the moment because I don't have to feel I don't have to think about the stresses. And so finding a way to, you know, deal with that and address, you know, kind of the monkey mind. Because that I feel like is my bigger issue. And so that's what I would want to help somebody else address if they were having that kind of issue.
Why did you feel the need to procrastinate?
Yes.
So there's a bunch of threads off of that going deeper into that, which is, for example, are you doing too much? Right? It's unreasonable for most people, especially if they haven't been working like 15-hour days regularly. There's some people who train themselves to do that, but if you're not there, don't expect to and you don't want to jump there overnight, and you may not even want to go there, right? And so like, you know, how much time, how many useful hours do you regularly have a day?
That is a very good question. And I think one of the difficulties for me is I can't predict what it's going to be, because some days I do have like 10 great hours and other days I have 2. And like today I was, you know, telling you I'm super sore today. Everything hurts, which is going to make everything I do today that much harder. And I'm going to muscle through because, you know, I've been not doing the best time management on my own. And so now I have to do the discipline stuff because, you know, I've backed myself into a corner, as it were. Which, you know, again, I want to take responsibility for as an adult. But also, you know, I look back and I'm like, why didn't I do this when I did have more time? You know? And so, but I also recognize, like, I can't go back in time. So it's this, like, circular, like, rumination.
So, I mean, I think at this point, like, finding the right workload and being able to use it somewhat flexibly would be journaling every day how many focused hours of work that you have. And I would really, if you really want to get into this, I would emphasize the focused. Not how many hours a day are you doing stuff on the business, but like what hours are you directly pursuing your top goals.
Okay. That's a really good idea.
And then what you're looking for is an average. And then what you'll probably find, you know, especially as the week goes on and you've got a lot to do, I certainly find that like I am more likely to burn out towards the end of the week. And so when I structure my time, I don't actually structure average days. I structure slightly longer on the first few days to like get stuff done, knowing that, for instance, Thursday tends to be my crash day. If I've really been working hard, then I have a hard time focusing on Thursdays. And then Fridays I have intentionally structured a little bit lighter with some coaching for myself. I have accountability partner to help me, you know, get back on track for the next week and kind of reframe. But the first thing is just trying to figure out, like, on average, how much focus time do you have? What kind of tasks are you putting in there, and how long does it take? Right? Because that's the other thing, is when you don't track the time your tasks take, you tend to underestimate.
And that's always been something I've struggled with. Like, you know, I talk a lot about in our relationship, I'm great with spatial, you know, things.
She remembers exactly where things are and directions and stuff like that.
But I have zero concept of time. Whereas Alec, it can be just randomly in the middle of the afternoon. You ask him what time it is, and he'll be within 5 minutes, even though he hasn't looked at a clock in hours. And I'm like, how do you do that? You know, so we help complement each other very well that way. But yes, my concept of time and understanding how long things take. There are certain things that, you know, I understand generally, like a shower. If I do this kind of shower, it takes me 7 minutes. And if I do this kind of shower, it takes me, you know, 16 minutes. But with work stuff that changes so frequently, it can be a little bit difficult. And so I like the idea of journaling that, though, like, because I can't go back and fix anything, but I can at least start now to track that so that hopefully I can have a more accurate understanding of what my capabilities are in the future. And as I look at this, other things I'm going to track are, what was my pain level of the day? What kind of activity did I, you know, so not just what kind of work stuff did I do, what other, activity, so physical exercise or errands that I had to run. How much caffeine did I have to drink that day? Things like that to, and how much sleep did I get the night before? So when I think about all of this, it seems kind of like a lot.
There's a lot of patterns.
Yeah, but they're all things that contribute. And given that it has become such an issue in my life, it seems worth the time to track now.
How much time do you think it'll take you to track that? Like when and how are you going to track that, etc.?
Well, as long as I have a notebook with me where I'm doing it, which I have multiple ones that I could use, it'll take me a second in the morning just to, note what time I woke up, or like what time I went to bed and then woke up or something like that. And then, there'll be times when I'm out and about, but I can, check in even just a couple times a day, right? 2 to 3 times a day, like mid-morning, mid-afternoon, and then before bed, just, having, if I actually make a chart. Charts are good. I like charts.
Nice.
So I can say, focused hours, errands, exercise, whatever. And then I can just on like a timeline say check. That way I don't even have to write anything. I just check boxes.
That's great. So what specific times are you going to check those boxes?
Let me think. So my first good time during the day is probably going to be like around 10, 11-ish. Because that's pretty much the only time every day that I actually am not doing something else. And then 2 would be another good one. And then before bed, I'm trying to think 2 or 4 or 2 or 3:30, I guess, these days. I don't know.
Just pick one.
Okay.
See how it works. If it doesn't work, try the other.
Thank you. See, I get caught up in the like.
What would be the ideal?
Is 2 better or is 3:30 better? I'm not sure. Well, let me like weigh out the pros and cons of 2 and 3:30, which it's an hour and a half difference. But that's where my mind goes, right? It really obsessed about that. So thank you.
So that's a big thing. Like, in terms of if you're not feeling like you're using your time well, one of the big things is just knowing how you are using your time. And sometimes what people find out is I'm actually doing more than I think, right? I'm picking up, groceries or other things, and so I'm doing more. But basically the whole goal of this is to figure out like how much time you have. And I guess you could slice this a few ways. If you're focusing just on business, it's just what focus time am I following my priorities? A different threshold to look at, and you can, again, this is one of the things, just experiment with which one works for you, is like how much functional time do I have? How much time do I have when I'm doing work stuff? Regardless of how focused it is. And it can include chores or exercise or whatnot. How long can that period be? And then, find your baseline. You can find how that pattern fluctuates throughout the week and then adjust, accordingly. And then I tend to front load a little bit to adjust to the fact if I have an, up and down schedule or things interject that like I am ahead of schedule and I have time to burn at the end of the week. If there's a crisis, I like to do that. But I think it is important also to set some caps. In terms of having downtime, having known scheduled downtime, right? And that's the problem for a lot of procrastinators is it's just like your brain says, I feel tired now, why don't I just take a break? And then that break stretches out. Rather than, okay, I can take a break in an hour. All right, I'm going to do this last thing before I take a break. That is the power of scheduling your downtime. You have something to look forward to, but also something you can stretch your brain a little bit.
And I think that's really important because for me, I hit that wall of burnout. Right? Because I think I can't have downtime today. It's just not going to happen. And I'm like, well, I'm over optimistic about my ability to have discipline and push through. And so even though it seems counterintuitive to plan downtime, in the end, it would be more effective because I can work up towards that, knowing that I can take that time and not worry about it, as opposed
Right.
to when I try to shut my brain down, there's always that thing in the back of
Mm-hmm.
my mind that's saying you should be doing this other thing, and so it's
Yeah.
not restful.
Yeah, it's not restful, and so it's not as restorative. The types of things you're likely to do when you take a break just
Yes.
because you want to take a break versus scheduled time off are much more likely to be mind-numbing things as opposed to like enjoyable, restorative things, going out and, you know, taking a
Going for a
walk,
walk,
etc. Art, music, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
any of those things versus like, you know, videos, just scrolling through social media feeds, games, etc. So,
Yeah. 2048.
yeah. I do that.
It's so easy to just turn my
nice.
brain off with that. Just like,
Yeah. The seeking to turn your brain off.
and that's a really effective means of doing it.
Yeah. Well, and okay. So I think, I mean, we have plenty to focus on here.
Yeah.
Right, just for now. And I'm just like, all right, you know, there's this I can all help you with, but also a lot of times, you know, less is more.
Yeah.
Focus on this. I think we will end up with maybe looking over what can you get done today? What's the minimum you can get done today is a good question.
Yeah. The minimum I can get done today is stay alive. I mean, I'm trying
Right. Like on the
Bare
minimum,
minimum.
like progress that you can make on your business, but like the MVP version, minimum version.
So, you know, I promised Sam to get her
Okay.
thesis back to her, and she is paying me for that. So it's not like it's, you know, completely just
Yeah.
out of the kindness of my heart. And I really like want to get it back to her today. So that's my MVP.
Alright.
As far as work is concerned.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Other things, though, like we've got a meeting with one of our kids' school things, and we've
Yep.
got there was something else. I can't remember, but there's things, and so
Yeah.
I'm just having to make sure that, yeah.
All right. Well, maybe tomorrow we can talk a little bit more about my adventures and or misadventures with my funnel, and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Or just like walk through it. My example funnel, I don't think I'll have data back by then, but I am going to try and get something up and maybe run
Yeah.
a few test ads, not full on video ads.
Yeah.
But we can cover that tomorrow. I think there's kind of a quote from Jordan Peterson that I can cap that off or paraphrase, which is he said, if you don't like working for yourself, then maybe you're a bad boss, right? And a lot of times, for instance, you know, there's a part of our brain that is the boss that you can never take time off. You're behind, you're lazy, etc. Which is like, that would be a terrible boss. If you wouldn't want to work for a boss like that, why are you trying to be that boss for yourself, right? And it's kind of like the friend exercise, but think about like, well, what would a good boss do recognizing, you know, your situation, like your ideal boss, right? How would they treat you? How would they encourage you? They would encourage you to a higher standard, right?
Yeah.
They would help you grow and change, but they'd help you from where you are. And so
Yeah.
instead of just saying like you're bad for not doing more, right? They'd first
Fired.
find out where you are,
Yeah.
and that's this biggest step here, and then you can increase that incrementally. If you want to become the crazy type of entrepreneur that works 15 hours a day, then you can work towards that. But you have to start from where you are, right? Don't jump.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to be hyper efficient with your time, that's a different way to optimize it, right? Where you structure things for intense focus and then longer periods of rest so that you can like recover from that intense focus rather than people who like kind of like a medium intensity that goes for a long time or a light intensity that goes for a long time. Like you could play all of those games once you know how much time you actually have.
Yeah.
So the business tip of the day, I got into the first one, which is just discipline. And I think, you know, we wandered away from that track because mostly this is just about time, I think, underlying that. And then once you understand where you are, you can start using these other levers to improve the quality of your time or what you're doing within that time. But but you need that framework first. So discipline is one of those, and it's the most short term. It's for doing things you don't want to do. And a lot of people overuse it and shame themselves for not having more discipline. A lot of people also think they have more discipline than they do. For instance, this is a great Alex Hormozy tweet when he says a lot of people who like to go to the gym think they're disciplined. No, if you like to do it, it's not discipline. You just enjoy doing it. That's intrinsic motivation, right? And so... you may not have an accurate bead on your level of discipline. People either overestimate it because they're attributing things they naturally like doing that they, think are virtuous to discipline, versus, people who tend to procrastinate a lot and feel like they have no discipline. I'm like, you have the same amount as everybody else. Problem is that you're not using the other two levers enough. The other two levers being inspiration. Can you get inspired by another source? And emotionally, I feel like, as a one-off event, this lasts as long as discipline, but it can be hacked a little bit better in the sense of you can, listen to your favorite song on repeat, or like regularly check in with that video. Becoming Supernatural, the book, they suggest people make an instead of just like an inspiration board, I think, and they probably do have somewhere the inspiration boards. Everyone has those. A whole video. But they have you turn it into a video with an inspiring song, so you have an image and the music and the word or phrase that captures your goal, like your vision movie or mind movie, I think they call it. And they encourage you to review that daily. And I have done that from period to period. It's not bad. It's effective, so much as, to a certain extent. But so you can hack that by finding the things that are inspiration and collecting them in some format in a vision board or mind movie, or listening to a song over and over again. You can try and tie your external or internal motivations to something that's less motivating. So one way I do that, I am highly motivated to change my behavior to be a better dad for my kids. And so I lean on that a lot with work, where it's like, all right, how could I embody what I would like to teach them in terms of work? And that helps keep me going when I'm really burnt out, right? So those are ways of borrowing motivation from another source or even yourself, and then trying to put it onto work, right? But it's still a short-term solution because that's depending on a feeling, and that feeling can go away. Now, the third lever that is the most underused one and does not rely on feelings is easiness. And so that's how easy is the activity? How could you make the activity easier? And I had to do this myself in the video sales funnel because, as I mentioned, I'm less comfortable on camera. I dislike producing video about myself. It's one of the reasons why we have to do this live, and why I shifted away from doing a video of myself talking to the camera, is because when I'm talking to Meg, I can somewhat forget that I'm doing a video, which is helpful for me, right? And so I had a whole lot of negative affect here in terms of editing the video that I shot, and I tried to do it mostly in one take. I broke it into two, and it, did hours until I was getting hoarse, which is one of the reasons I've been losing my voice. You're right. And then I had the takes. And what I had to do, I really didn't want to edit it, and putting it live, like putting videos of myself live, is hard for me. Again, this is why this stream is so great. This is the hack that works for me, is it's already live. I don't have to put it live. I just have to hit end. so it's a great psychological hack for me. But I do occasionally have to produce videos. So my thing is what could I do? What's the next smallest step? And that was just opening my video editor and putting my clips in. I had, not cutting them yet, but just open the editor and drag my videos into it. And all right, that's what I'm going to commit to. That's my next step. And I just kind of realized yesterday that I was at a point where, probably I was either going to flip myself into avoidance or procrastination mode, or I was going to do this one thing, and I made that task easier for myself, and now I have it open on my computer. There's a little bit of momentum, and today it's all right, today I can do this.
Yes.
So, I set myself, I set that up. I broke the task into an easier one that day, but also I made today easier, so it's easier for me to jump into work after this, where all right, fine, I'll edit.
Yeah.
So, Your levers are discipline, inspiration, and ease. And really, the great thing about ease, especially if you can find a system that makes things easy regularly, like, you know, if I chronically had to produce videos, well, actually, no, this is exactly, the live stream is the perfect example of that, right? I made it easy for myself. I can't agonize over editing it or producing it because we're live streaming. So I like remove that friction, and magically we're able to do a video a day. Well, and I also got your help, which also makes it easier for me. It's like once you find a system that makes things easier, like I don't really struggle with these videos half as much as I struggled with the one video I produced a week, right? And I'm doing 5 times as much. So, you know, that is a good example of like I don't have to rely on loving the production of video. There's some cool stuff about it, but like I just hate seeing and hearing myself on camera. But I don't have to struggle with that as much because I have a system that makes it easier. I don't have the discipline, right? I don't have to just rely, all right, let's get this video done this time. It relies only on my discipline. No, it relies on like schedule, expectation, habit, you. So those are the 3 levers. And I am still working on how to give that in like a short, pithy snippet. I always want to explain everything. But that's our Easier Habits video. Again, we're live at 8 a.m. Central every weekday. Please join us. We'd love to see some questions and comments in the chat that we could respond to. That's our goal. We want to build a community of entrepreneurs who are starting off their morning with some inspiration and like behind the scenes take, not just like the successful person showing you how successful they are right after the fact.
And this was a longer video. They're not usually this long, but it was a particular thing that I needed a lot of help with. And so thank you.
And I talk a lot.
That too.
All right. Until tomorrow.